The sound of gentle waves lapping against the shore was the only thing I wanted to hear that weekend. I had driven 4 hours just to escape the madness of the city and land myself into the arms of nature, where peace wasn't just a word, it was the air I breathed. My lake cabin wasn't just a place to relax, it was home in its purest form. Built by my grandfather with his own hands, every plank and nail had meaning. And after a long, stressful month, I finally had a chance to soak it all in, alone, quiet, and away from people like Karen. Yes, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, who walked around like she ran the county. She was the type of neighbor who smiled at your face but called the HOA on you if your grass was half an inch too tall. Most people in our community knew to keep their distance. She had a way of twisting rules, forming cliques, and holding power like it was her birthright. But me? I had never bowed to that kind of false authority, and she knew it. Maybe that's why she targeted me in the first place. I had just poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the porch that overlooked the lake. Sunlight sparkled across the water. Birds chirped in harmony. I was at peace. Then I heard tires crunching on gravel. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked down the dirt path, I saw it, a shiny white Escalade rolling into my property like it belonged there. It parked right in front of my truck, blocking it in. And out stepped Karen Mathers, in full HOA mode. Sunglasses, clipboard, phone in hand, like she was here to conduct an inspection on something she didn't own. Before I could say a word, she called out with her usual air of entitlement. "You're here early," she said, like I was on someone else's schedule. Then she added, "My son is coming down with some friends later. They'll be using your cabin this weekend." I blinked. I genuinely thought she was joking. "I'm sorry, what?" She strutted up the porch steps like she was walking into a country club, not someone's home. "Brent and his friends are celebrating graduation. I told them they could stay at your cabin since you're never really here. It's just sitting empty most of the time, Anne." "No," I cut her off, calm but firm. "Karen, this is private property. You don't get to tell people they can use my cabin." She scoffed like I was the rude one. "Excuse me? It's a community. We share here. This is not a shared space. This is my land. My cabin. And nobody has permission to stay here except me." Karen's face changed. The fake smile disappeared. Her jaw tightened and her eyes narrowed. "This is exactly why some people don't belong in these neighborhoods," she muttered, almost under her breath, but just loud enough. I froze for a second. Some people? She didn't say it directly, but I knew what she meant. It wasn't the first time she had made comments about how people from the city didn't understand how things worked in her community. She'd once told me, straight-faced, that the town was founded on traditional values and didn't need big city attitudes messing it up. "I don't need your approval to be here," I replied calmly. "I have more right to this land than you ever will." Karen glared at me for a second, then said something that chilled my spine, "You'll regret being so difficult." She turned and walked back to her car, heels clicking against the wood like a warning shot. The door slammed, and the Escalade sped off. I stood there for a moment, trying to figure out what just happened. Had she really tried to gift my cabin to her son? Did she really believe she had that kind of power? I shook my head and went back inside. Tried to enjoy my day. But something didn't sit right. I knew Karen. And I knew she wasn't done. Not even an hour later, I heard more vehicles approaching. I stepped outside again, heart already sinking. 3 loud trucks pulled into the driveway, 2 of them lifted with obnoxious exhausts, the kind that announce trouble before the door even opens. And sure enough, Brent, Karen's son, was leading the pack. He was the kind of guy who wore a backwards cap, always looked like he was mid-beer, and thought every sentence had to end with a joke at someone else's expense. Behind him were 3 more guys. Loud, shirtless, tossing footballs and beer cans between them like it was a frat house. I watched them climb out and start walking toward my porch without hesitation. "Yo!" Brent called out. "My mom said you'd be gone by now. We're crashing here for the weekend." "No, you're not," I said, already stepping off the porch to block their path. Brent stopped in his tracks, smirking like he thought I was kidding. "Come on, man. Don't be that guy. It's just a weekend. You are not welcome on this property. Turn around. Now." His smile faded. "You serious?" As a heart attack. Another guy behind him laughed. "Wow. Guess he thinks he's better than us." Brent stepped forward, his voice lowering. "Look, you've never been part of this community. You don't even talk to anyone here. Don't act like you own the place." "I do own the place." He glanced at the others. "Let's go, boys. We'll be back." They got in their trucks and sped off, tires flinging gravel everywhere. I stood there, heart pounding, more angry than afraid. Because I knew what came next. And I was right. Within 20 minutes, red and blue lights flashed through the trees, and the wail of sirens broke the calm of the lakeside. Karen had called 911. And I was ready for whatever came through that gravel road next. The sirens pierced the calm like a knife. Birds scattered from the trees, and I could feel my pulse racing even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I stood tall on my porch, watching as the sheriff's cruiser rolled down the gravel path toward my cabin. The vehicle came to a halt, dust swirling around it like smoke in a western standoff. For a moment, everything was still. Then the door opened, and out stepped a tall, no-nonsense county deputy in full uniform, dark shades hiding his eyes, a hand resting lightly near his belt. This wasn't the first time I'd dealt with police presence, but something about the way he walked, slow, purposeful, told me he wasn't here to play games. Karen must have really spun a tale. "Morning," he called out in a steady tone as he approached. "Morning, officer," I replied, calm and respectful. He stopped at the bottom of the porch, one hand now on his clipboard. "Got a call from a concerned neighbor. Said there was a disturbance at this address. Possibly a trespassing situation." I tilted my head slightly. "Trespassing?" I asked, then gave a short laugh. "Officer, this is my property. I'm the only one here. No disturbance. Just me and my coffee." He studied me for a moment, then looked around the cabin, scanned the path, and noted the truck parked beside the porch. "Name?" I gave him my full name, and the moment I did, I noticed a subtle shift in his posture. He pulled out a phone, typed something in, then looked back at me. "You own this parcel?" "Yes, sir. And I have the deed in the cabin if you'd like to see it." There was a brief pause. He didn't ask for the deed. He didn't need to. I could tell he already knew. He gave a short nod and then said, "Mind if I ask who this neighbor is that made the call?" "Karen Mathers," I answered without hesitation. "She stopped by earlier today. Tried to tell me that her son would be using my cabin this weekend. Told her that wasn't happening." The deputy took off his sunglasses now, revealing a pair of sharp, tired eyes. He sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from dealing with the same nonsense too many times. "I figured," he muttered. That's when I realized something. He already knew who she was. "You've had calls like this before, haven't you?" I asked. He gave a tight smile. "Let's just say this isn't Karen's first 911 creativity session. But you're new to her list." I nodded slowly. "Well, I didn't give her what she wanted. I guess this is how she plays." The deputy glanced back toward his vehicle and then asked, "Would you mind if I looked around, just for the sake of the report?" "Not at all," I replied, opening the cabin door. Want a coffee while you're at it? He chuckled. That's the best offer I've had all day. He stepped inside, looked around the clean cabin, not a thing out of place. Hardwood floors shining. A few framed pictures of my grandfather. Fishing rods lined up near the window. Peaceful. Private. Not exactly the scene of criminal activity. After a few minutes, he stepped back out and said, "All right, that's good enough for me. No sign of trespassing, no disturbance, no issue. You're fine." "Thanks, Deputy," I said, relieved but still a little tense. He paused for a second and then said something I wasn't expecting. "You know," he began, "we've gotten more than a few complaints from her side of the lake. Not just about noise or property. Some of them, they're targeted. I've been watching it build for a while. Lot of her issues seem to happen when certain folks move in." I didn't have to ask what he meant. He looked me straight in the eye and added, "For what it's worth, you handled it right. Calm. Lawful. Karen can bark all she wants, doesn't mean she's in charge." That's when he did it. He gave me a crisp, respectful nod, not the kind you throw at just anyone. The kind that says, "I see you." The kind that carries weight. The kind of nod one officer gives another when there's mutual understanding. Then he saluted. It wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't dramatic. Just a firm, simple salute. And I returned it. Because while he didn't know it yet, I had once served too. Quietly. Without need for recognition. Years ago, in another life. But it was there. And he could tell. He turned to head back toward his cruiser, pausing only to say, "If anyone else shows up here claiming they have rights to your cabin, you call us first. Don't waste your breath arguing. We'll handle it." With that, he left. The moment he drove away, I felt something shift inside me. A strange mix of anger, validation, and peace. Karen had tried to weaponize the law against me. Tried to twist reality and push her son into a place he didn't belong, literally and morally. And when that didn't work, she called in backup, thinking I'd fold. But she underestimated who I was. Who my family was. What this land meant. I wasn't just some guy she could push around. And now the law, real law, was on my side. But something told me Karen wasn't done. Her son hadn't shown up again yet, but I had a feeling that wasn't the end of it. People like Karen didn't take losing quietly. Especially not to someone they looked down on. Still, I wasn't worried. Because I'd seen what happened when truth met power, and truth stood tall. I thought that after the deputy left, things would settle down. For a day or two, they did. The lake was calm again, my mornings were quiet, and I started to believe maybe, just maybe, Karen had gotten the message. But people like her don't take silence as a defeat. They treat it like a challenge. 3 mornings later, I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel again. But this time, it wasn't a cruiser. It was a lifted black SUV with tinted windows. I watched from inside as it rolled to a stop just outside my gate. The engine cut off, and 2 doors slammed. Out stepped Karen's son, a young man in his 20s, maybe, wearing camo cargo shorts, a tank top, and mirrored sunglasses. He had the kind of smirk on his face that only comes from years of entitlement and zero consequences. Behind him, another man stepped out. Bigger. Bald. Wearing a leather vest and chewing on a toothpick like a movie villain. I walked out to the porch, arms crossed. No fear. No welcome. The son raised a hand and waved like we were old friends. "Morning," he called out. "Can't help but notice you're back," I said, voice steady. He shrugged. "Yeah, I figured there must have been a misunderstanding. My mom said this place was offered up for the weekend, so." "No misunderstanding," I cut in. "Your mom said that." I didn't. And I already told her, this cabin isn't for rent, not for loan, not for guests. Especially not uninvited ones. The big guy stepped forward now. Look, man, he grunted. We drove all the way out here. It's not like we're trying to cause trouble. Just want to use the dock, maybe throw some beers around, catch the sunset. That's not happening, I replied firmly. Turn around. Now. Karen's son took a step closer. You know, this place is technically under HOA jurisdiction. You can't just deny access if the board allows shared use. I laughed. Out loud. A real laugh this time. HOA has no legal claim to this property. The land line ends 40 feet that way, I pointed. This cabin's on private, deeded land, purchased and recorded before your precious HOA even existed. They didn't like that. His smirk faltered, and he reached into his pocket. What he pulled out looked like a folded piece of paper. I've got a document here. I don't care what paper you printed at home, I interrupted. You're trespassing. Then I pointed behind them. And if you're not gone in the next 5 minutes, I'll call the same deputy your mom tried to fool last time. He already knows who owns what. You want to try your luck with him? The big guy looked at the son, then muttered, "This ain't worth it, man." But the kid wasn't backing down yet. Nah, he's bluffing. What's he gonna do? Sit up there with his coffee while we enjoy the lake? I walked down 2 steps, slow and deliberate. I was trying to be polite, I said. But let me be clear now. You are trespassing. I don't care who your mother is. I don't care what paper you brought. If you step 1 foot past that line, you're not going to like what happens next. He raised his hands mockingly. Oh, tough guy. What, you got a shotgun inside? Gonna scare us off like an old movie? No, I said. I won't have to lift a finger. Right on cue, from behind the cabin, came the low growl of an engine. A matte gray SUV pulled up from the side trail, one I had built for emergencies. The window rolled down, and out popped the face of a U.S. Marshal Service buddy of mine. He'd come to stay for a couple days, I hadn't mentioned that yet. Behind him, another man stepped out from the woods in full tactical gear. Not aggressive, but definitely official. Karen's son turned pale. The big guy took 2 full steps back and held up both hands. Whoa, all right, we're gone. Yeah, the son muttered. We didn't mean nothing by it. You did, I said calmly. But that's over now. They stumbled back to their SUV, muttering to each other, avoiding eye contact. And when they drove off, they didn't just leave the cabin. They left the lake entirely. I stood in silence as their car disappeared into the trees. Nice timing, I said over my shoulder. My marshal friend gave a grin. Thought you might want some backup today. Karen's name came up on a few complaint logs recently. Didn't like the pattern we were seeing. I nodded slowly. She's not just annoying. She's dangerous. He agreed. People like her think property law is a suggestion. It's not. And trying to bully a veteran homeowner on his own land? He whistled. Bad play. We spent the rest of that evening sharing stories by the fire pit. The lake was quiet again. The stars came out like they always did, proud and unbothered. But I knew one thing now for sure, Karen and her son weren't just arrogant. They were entitled enough to break rules, twist facts, and even fake legal claims just to control something that was never theirs. The sad part? It probably worked on other people. But not me. This cabin wasn't just wood and nails. It was legacy. It was peace. And no HOA, no Karen, and no smug little punk was going to take that away from me. They came here thinking I'd roll over. But they forgot, I didn't build this life to be pushed around. And now they knew exactly who they were dealing with. The days following that final confrontation were strangely quiet. For the first time in weeks, there were no strange cars slowing down outside my gate, no HOA emails about communal harmony, and no sudden knock at the door from someone trying to twist the rules. Karen had disappeared. Her son hadn't been seen near the lake since he and his wannabe bodyguard were sent packing. I should have felt at ease. But honestly, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it did, 3 days later. That morning, I was sitting on my porch with a hot cup of coffee, enjoying the sunrise and the reflection of the lake dancing like gold. Then I saw it, a white county cruiser rolling up my drive. But this wasn't the same deputy from last time. No, this was someone new. A younger guy. Sharp uniform. Tinted sunglasses. Looked like he just came out of training. He stepped out, adjusted his belt, and said in a polite but rehearsed voice, "Sir, we've received a report of a disturbance on your property. May I come in?" I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, a woman named Karen made the call. He didn't answer, just repeated, "May I come in, sir?" I stood up. "Deputy, I'd be happy to speak with you, but not until I know what I'm being accused of." "What kind of a disturbance was reported?" He glanced at his notepad. Caller claimed a veteran property owner was holding unauthorized weapons training at a lake cabin. There were concerns about safety, especially around children in the area. I blinked. It was so ridiculous, I almost laughed. But I didn't. I could see it now, Karen's final play. If she couldn't bully me or trespass on my land, she'd try to have the law do it for her. She figured if she painted me as a danger, she could justify any action against me, even eviction. This wasn't just HOA harassment anymore. This was character assassination. I took a deep breath. "Deputy, I don't know what Karen told you, but let me make something clear. I'm a licensed veteran. I own this land outright, and any firearms on this property are legally registered and locked up. The only weapons training that's ever happened here was years ago, under permit, and never near civilians." The deputy tilted his head. "You know her by name?" "Everyone here does," I said. "She's harassed me multiple times. Called the cops on me. Had her son show up claiming they had rights to my cabin. All of it documented, including the last visit, when your fellow officer realized what she was up to and left without incident." He seemed to take that in. He looked around, no noise, no chaos, no suspicious activity. Just a man and his coffee. "I don't see any issue here," he finally said, a bit more relaxed. "Mind if I take a quick walk around? Purely for due diligence?" "Go ahead," I said, stepping aside. "You'll find nothing." He did his walk, checked everything, even peeked through the cabin window. He came back in under 5 minutes. "You were right," he admitted. "I'm going to mark this as unfounded. No action necessary." Before leaving, he paused. "By the way, my dad served too. Marines. Said veterans like you deserve peace, not this kind of nonsense." I gave him a nod. "Thank you. And thank your dad for his service." He looked at me for a second longer, and then, with a smirk, raised his hand in a quick, respectful salute. "Take care, sir." And just like that, he drove off. No tickets. No warnings. No further calls. That salute? That was everything. Because for all of Karen's complaints, all her threats and lies, none of it had shaken who I was, or what this place stood for. She'd underestimated me from day one. Figured I'd cave to pressure. That I'd hand over my legacy because someone yelled loud enough or printed fake documents. But legacy doesn't bend to noise. It doesn't fear a clipboard. It doesn't back down from bullies. Later that week, I found out from a neighbor that Karen had quietly sold her house. Apparently, the HOA board had reviewed her history of false reports and harassment complaints. She wasn't just annoying anymore, she was a liability. They voted her off the board. 2 members even apologized to me in person. Honestly, one of them said, "We didn't know it had gotten that bad. We should have stopped her sooner." I didn't need the apology. But I appreciated it. It meant the truth had finally outshone the fiction. And so, here I am now. Still at my cabin. Still watching the lake glow at sunrise. Still sipping my coffee in peace. The only difference? Now, when I see a car drive by or a new neighbor move in, I don't feel on edge. I feel grounded. Because I stood up when it mattered. I said no when most would have said, "Fine, take it." I protected what was mine, not just with rules or papers, but with courage and calm. Karen thought she could weaponize the system. But I reminded her that justice still salutes the truth. And that's a story I'll never forget.